Right, I've been given dispensation to talk for 10 minutes because the government keeps moving the goalposts and I've had to change what I've written about every other day. I'm going to be much more specific. My talk is on Brexit and the future of migration with a focus on London's East End. London's East End has been a traditional first point of settlement for centuries. In most instances, and there of course have been exceptions which we can discuss later, when the migrant presence becomes too visible and too numerous, compassion and tolerance turn to intolerance and discrimination. At the end of the 17th century, having donated money to help the Huguenot refugees, Samuel Pepys remarked, "We do naturally all hate the French." Concern over numbers and the migrant impact on national identity is not new to the 21st century. In 1892, the Reverend Reaney, referring to Eastern European Jews in the East End, stated, "In face, instinct, language and character, their children are aliens. They seldom become citizens." In 1982, the focus was on Bangladeshis. One East Ender complained that the children of white council tenants were being forced out of the area in order to make way for the coloured people. At a racist-inspired meeting 2 years later, a local resident recommended that you put all these people, these were Bangladeshis, in Fairfoot Road and I'll drop a petrol bomb on them. These quotations highlight the way in which, though the temporal context may change, xenophobic fears follow a repeat pattern, one which makes few allowances for the benefits of the migrant presence. In the run-up to the 2016 referendum, this fact was illustrated by the way in which immigration was cited by many as being the main advantage of leaving the EU. We need to take back control of our borders and control immigration. The complexity of monitoring who was coming in and who was going out, and from where to where, was never considered. Brexiteers focused on the negative impact immigrants were having on national identity, housing, jobs, and overcrowding in our schools, hospitals, and GP practices. The impressive contributions made to our economy, doing the jobs that Englishmen won't do, while working at all skill levels in medicine and education and other professions, were either ignored or unknown. And this is something I'm sure we can discuss later. Though the East End has long been a gateway to economic opportunity and place of immigrant settlement, following the 2004 and 2007 accessions to the EU, a different pattern of settlement evolved. Recent European newcomers have dispersed throughout the United Kingdom, taking up employment in agriculture, the hospitality sector, in meat packaging, factories, coffee shops and restaurants, as well as in medicine, education and banking. While some acknowledge the benefits, as the pattern of Brexit voting revealed, in England, most of Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland voted to stay in areas where until recently there had been little or no interaction between migrant and indigene, others did not, seeing only the negative aspects of immigration. Brexiteers see a positive Brexit world, convinced that a United Kingdom with severely restricted immigration can provide for all the nation's needs. However, without its immigrant population, our industrial and economic structure, let alone the health, education and manufacturing sectors, will be much the poorer, a concern that's been voiced by many in the fields I referred to. But as our Prime Minister has said, Brexit means Brexit. So what can we anticipate and how should we approach a post-Brexit world? In the brief time I have, I'll focus on two specific areas which will be affected by departure from the EU and see what they are saying. They are higher education and the NHS. In order to do so, I'm taking two institutions in the East End as case studies, with data supplied by Queen Mary University of London and the Barts NHS Health Trust. Currently, EU students pay the same fees as those in the UK and have access to tuition loans, preferential fee rates, and are free to find work after study without obtaining a visa. All this is destined to change after Brexit in March 2019. At present, undergraduate fees at Queen Mary are £9,250 a year for home and EU students and £14,500 for those from overseas. In the country as a whole, there are some 135 students from the EU, mainly at Russell Group universities. Now, this is why I had to update, because the government announced last night that students registering for entry to UK universities in 2019 will pay the same fees and receive the same support as at present. However, there's no statement been made yet as what will happen to those wishing to register from 2020 onwards, nor what the long-term reciprocal arrangements for UK-EU students will be. Queen Mary, in common with others, fears that if EU students are not charged at a beneficial rate, then it and other institutions of its calibre will be in direct competition with prestigious universities in Australia and America. Queen Mary is currently forecasting that recruitment from the richest EU countries could decline by 2/3, and from poorer countries, for example Romania, it might cease. The university is free, as are others, to set its own rates, so it could maintain the status quo and offer EU students the same rate after Brexit. However, all the other benefits would be lost. Another major unknown lies with the Erasmus scheme post-Brexit. This enables EU students from 32 European countries to go and study for a year in another member country. The UK is the third and most popular in the scheme, with 30,000 students coming to the UK in 2015 and 40,000 of our students going to Europe. At present, it's unclear how the Erasmus scheme will be affected by Brexit, but it has been said that the departure of Britain will undermine its framework. It is not only at student level that higher education will be affected. The prevailing uncertainty has filtered through to EU academic staff. The head of the School of Politics and IR at QMUL has told me of the concerns of some of his excellent EU colleagues feeling unwanted and unsure as to whether they will acquire leave to remain, i.e. settled status. Some have indeed encountered delays and difficulties when applying. This unease is also undermining those both applying for and awarding pan-European research grants, which include researchers from the UK. The current EU research pot, in which the UK shares, is £89 billion, rising to £100 billion after 2021. Uncertainty in higher education will lose opportunities and the best of the best. Losing the best of the best is a facet of the concerns facing the NHS. 10% of its doctors and 5% of its nurses are from the EU. As with academics, there's concern about obtaining leave to remain after Brexit, and others feel a sense of being unwelcome and are considering returning to their home countries, and I've met quite a few. At the Barts NHS Health Trust, there are 1,700 staff from the EU, and the Trust acknowledges the uncertainty that exists. Its website gives guidance as to how to apply for British citizenship and settled status, but there are a number of processes to go through, and not all those in the Trust, as in hospitals elsewhere, any longer feel comfortable in a post-Brexit Britain. In addition, the Trust reports difficulties in recruitment within the impending context of Brexit. As well as a result of European students feeling unwelcome, there's been a decline of 16% in European students applying to the Trust's medical school in 2017-18. There is no doubt that the feeling of insecurity and of being unwelcome persists in all areas where there are European migrant workers. Some are considering going home, others are unsure, though there are those that say they will stay in Britain. Britain is their home. EU citizens are still entering the UK, though that number is falling, while that of those leaving is on the increase. In a climate in which politicians, business executives and professionals in both Britain and the EU are expressing their concern about post-Brexit Britain and the degree of uncertainty that persists, we all need to look carefully at the contribution immigrants make, both from the EU and elsewhere, sort out the good migrants from the bad migrants, and ensure that Britain continues to welcome those from overseas who help make Britain great. From the foregoing, I think you can guess which side of the Brexit fence I'm on. Thank you.
Thank you so much.